Saudi Arabia, birthplace of the Prophet Mohammed. The Prophet Mohammed. Our graphics department must have decided against that one for some reason. Now, Saudi Arabia has been in the news this week for a truly appalling reason, and it has to do with Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi, a US resident and columnist for the Washington Post, who has not been seen since he stepped to the Saudi consulate in Turkey to pick up some paperwork 12 days ago.
This is Jamal Khashoggi captured on closed-circuit cameras, stepping into what Turkish authorities believe was a death trap. Turkish authorities have identified 15 Saudi men as persons of interest, only hours before Khashoggi went missing. Several of them were caught on camera arriving in Istanbul. A Turkish official tells the New York Times Saudi agents had dismembered his body with a bone saw they brought for the purpose.
It's absolutely horrific, and the Saudis deny it happened, although let us all agree on this. A bone saw in any context is an immediate red flag. Thanks so much for inviting me over for Thanksgiving, Craig. The turkey's delicious, the stuffing is perfect, that's a very large bone saw, and I just remembered I have to leave now. Now, Saudi officials have scrambled to explain all the suspicious activity surrounding his disappearance, with the Saudi-owned channel Al Arabiya claiming that the 15 people who turned up in Istanbul were just tourists, which is clearly bullshit, given that flight logs showed that most of the men arrived on a private charter plane at 3:13 a.m. and that all of them departed the same day they arrived, which is a pretty weird vacation, isn't it? I want to see Istanbul, but only for a few hours, mostly at night, and I need to bring my bone saw. Also, the whole "we were just tourists" excuse isn't even a new one. In the wake of Russia's poisoning of Sergei Skripal, the Russian suspects tried the same thing.
What were you doing there?
Our friends had been suggesting for a long time that we visit this wonderful town.
Salisbury? A wonderful town?
Yes.
There's the famous Salisbury Cathedral, famous not only in Europe, but in the whole world. It's famous for its 123-meter spire. It's famous for its clock, the one of the first ever created in the world that's still working.
OK, so first, I love how the reporter immediately became suspicious when they called Salisbury a wonderful town. She knows what's up. It's like if you heard someone call celery a delicious treat. Look, I don't know what else you're not telling the truth about, but now I definitely know you're a fucking liar. And second, it's famous for its 123-metre spire. They sound like they're reading directly off the Wikipedia page for Salisbury. Oh, why do I love Salisbury? It's simple. The population is 40,302. And their Member of Parliament is John Glenn, a Conservative whose 8-year tenure has been widely viewed as a failure, open brackets, citation needed, close brackets. But look, for all the Saudi denials, things are not looking good right now, as the Turkish government reportedly have audio and video proof of the assassination. Look, this story is incredibly grim, because while this may be the first that you have heard of Jamal Khashoggi, he has long been a significant figure in Saudi Arabia, a thoughtful and by no means radical critic of the Saudi royal family. And this is all worrying, because the only reason to kill a journalist in your own consulate with 15 people and a bone saw you flew in that day is because you wanted to send a message and you were sure you could get away with it. Which raises the question, why would they be so sure of that? And part of that answer may have to do with us. So tonight, let's take a look at America's relationship with Saudi Arabia, because we have a long and morally compromised history. In short, in very short, for decades, we have had a relationship based on strategic interests, not shared values. They have oil, we need it. They opposed Iran, and so did we. And for those and other reasons, US presidents have, to varying degrees, been willing to pander to Saudi Arabia. And in doing so, we've conveniently turned a blind eye to a lot of things, from human rights abuses to the Saudi leadership's role in funding religious extremism, even while partnering with us to fight it. It's always been a very complicated relationship. But in the last couple of years, it's actually gotten significantly closer thanks to two new leaders, Trump and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And let's take the prince first. Though his father, the king, is still alive, since last year, the prince has effectively been running the country and has branded himself as MBS, the young, new face of Saudi Arabia. He made the cover of Time magazine under the headline Charm Offensive, and 60 Minutes profiled him as a progressive voice for the country.
His reforms inside Saudi Arabia have been revolutionary. He is emancipating women, introducing music and cinema, and cracking down on corruption.
Now, there is some truth to that. He's attempted to reduce the influence of some hardline clerics, he has agreed to let women drive, and he's allowed movie theatres after a 35-year ban, although I will note that one of the very first movies they showed there was, and this is true, The Emoji Movie, which, in hindsight, is actually how it was always supposed to be seen by a group of people who had never seen a good movie to compare it to. Now, all of that has been combined with a major plan to reorient the Saudi economy away from oil and toward technology called Vision 2030. To that end, MBS has gone on a world tour this year to reassure investors that Saudi Arabia is stable and progressive and that businesses should feel comfortable working with them. He's taken meetings with Tim Cook, Bill Gates and Richard Branson, and has even had Starbucks with Michael Bloomberg. Incidentally, while the Starbucks baristas miraculously nailed Mohammed bin Salman, Bloomberg still ended up with a cup reading Mikey Boomburp. Now, as part of his PR push, MBS started an annual business conference called the Future Investment Initiative, or as it's known, Davos in the Desert. The first one was held just last year at the RitzCarlton in Riyadh, featuring leaders of many big-name companies, as well as the usual futuristic tech bullshit like this.
We have smart investors here, and they are very selective about what they invest in.
Well, I think I'm special. I can use my expressive face to communicate with people.
But why is it important for you to have an expressive face?
But most of the time I feel positive.
Oh, God. Oh, God. That is a creepy smile. That's the exact same smile that I've seen the Queen give when she has to interact with a commoner. I believe you won some kind of contest to come to my house and look at my things. What a positive day for one of us. Don't touch anything. But MBS's PR push isn't just toward attracting businesses, it's also toward changing the world's perception of Saudi Arabia. To that end, he struck a 10-year deal with one of the most popular and most American franchises there is, World Wrestling Entertainment, or WWE. They held their first of many events there back in April, and audiences around the world were treated to wall-to-wall propaganda about the new Saudi Arabia, including a video showing women happily driving, men dancing, and tourist destination beauty shots, as well as constant excited compliments throughout the broadcast.
For the first time, WWE bringing an event of this magnitude to Saudi Arabia. This vibrant, progressive city, our host tonight. It's all part, of course, of the Saudi Vision 2030.
King Abdullah Sports City Stadium just got on its feet.
That area has been reserved for the Saudi royal family, the House of Saud.
I want to send a genuine thank you to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Wow. It seems the WWE is as overtly pro-Saudi Arabia as it is latently homoerotic, which is to say, intensely. But the truth is, MBS is far from the political reformer that he's been presented as. In fact, scratch any positive story about him and you will find a much grimmer truth underneath. For instance, while the country did get headlines for ending its ban on women driving, just weeks before, authorities arrested about a dozen female activists who'd campaigned for the right to drive. Even that investment conference had a dark coda because just 1 week later, at the exact same hotel, this happened.
New footage from inside the RitzCarlton Hotel in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, shows the dramatic transformation from a favorite haunt of the well-heeled into arguably the world's most luxurious prison.
It's true. MBS used that Ritz-Carlton to lock up hundreds of businessmen and members of the royal family in a so-called anti-corruption campaign. At least 17 detainees were reportedly hospitalised for physical abuse, and one Saudi military officer died in custody, which is obviously insane and horrifying because the only hotel where you expect to be murdered is a Days Inn. Hence their slogan, Days Inn, expect to be murdered here. Meanwhile, Bin Salman has been aggressive with his neighbours, launching a blockade of Qatar last year that continues to this day, as does an absolutely brutal war in Yemen that has resulted in over 16,000 casualties and killed over 1,200 children. The Saudi campaign of airstrikes has been catastrophic, as this man attested while standing in front of what used to be his home.
Saudi Arabia bombs without care.
How many of your family were killed?
27 lives, 27 people, from one family.
Can you think of any reason why your family in this house might have been struck?
I am not a leader or anything. I work as a barber.
I mean, that's clearly terrible, and for the record, at the very least, There is no justification for violence against a barber, and that is coming from me. If anyone has a justification for a blood grudge against barbers, it would be yours truly because of what they did to me. And yet, as all of this has happened, our current president has continued to bend over backwards to accommodate and ignore bin Salman's worst excesses, and sometimes even celebrate them. After that clampdown on corruption at the RitzCarlton, many around the world sounded the alarm. But Trump went the other way.
Trump endorsed Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's new corruption crackdown, tweeting, quote, "I have great confidence in King Salman and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. They know exactly what they are doing."
Right. But just because they know what they're doing doesn't mean that what they're doing is good. Michael Jordan knew exactly what he was doing when he wore this mustache in a Hanes commercial. He was seeing how far this whole Michael Jordan thing could take him, and the answer was apparently through Hitler and beyond. And that actually fits with the larger pattern of Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia, because since taking office, he has catered to them at every single turn. He made Saudi Arabia the first foreign country he visited as president, and he seemed to have an absolutely great time there, dancing with a sword and famously groping a weird glowing orb. After which, I assume Michael Cohen instinctively offered the orb $130,000 and told it to keep quiet. And look, it really shouldn't be that surprising to anybody that Trump has so enthusiastically embraced the Saudi royal family. They have the two qualities he admires most in the world, having a lot of money and giving it to him. He basically said as much on the campaign trail.
Saudi Arabia, and I get along great with all of them. They buy apartments from me, they spend 40 million, 50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much.
Yeah, of course. Buying an apartment from Trump is a surefire way to get him to like you, along with wearing one of his hats, being under 25 years old with a size 32 double D, and not being Eric. He's a simple man with simple tastes. And Trump's businessman view of the Saudis as just people with money, don't ask too many questions, has carried over now that he's president. When bin Salman came to the White House, Trump called a press conference in the Oval Office where he boasted about the amount of arms that they were buying from us, essentially using MBS as a human easel.
Some of the things that have been approved and are currently under construction and will be delivered to Saudi Arabia very soon, and that's for their protection. But if you look in terms of dollars, $3 billion, $533 million, $525 million, that's peanuts for you. Should have increased it. $880 million, $645 million, $6 billion, that's for frigates.
First, has any human in the history of the world more obviously just learned a word than he just learned the word frigates? Frigates! But second, look at bin Salman's face there as it hits him just how much Trump likes money. It's like the face of a babysitter who realised you can pacify a screaming kid with Twizzlers. Oh, I thought this was going to be difficult, but if all you want is Twizzlers, I've got loads of them here. Take all you want and shut the fuck up. And look, I am by no means saying that Trump is the first US president to make distasteful arms deals with the Saudis. We've been doing it for decades. The Obama administration still sold them weapons, even as Saudi Arabia got involved in Yemen. But Trump has continued doing so, even as signs mount of Saudi recklessness in airstrikes. 2 months ago, they dropped an American-made bomb on a school bus full of children. But just a month later, Trump's defense secretary said that Saudi Arabia was doing everything it could to prevent civilian casualties, and we carried on supporting them. My point here is, at every turn, Trump has gone out of his way to accommodate the Saudis. He doesn't even have an ambassador to the kingdom. Our relationship with them is being handled personally by Jared, Ivanka Trump's real doll. And the Saudis seem understandably very happy with that situation.
Kushner took an unannounced trip to Saudi Arabia in 2017 to meet with the young prince. Months later, MBS reportedly boasted that Kushner was, quote, in his pocket, which bin Salman denied.
Yeah, of course he's in their pocket. He's fucking Jared. That face was born to be manoeuvred into someone's pocket. His Secret Service nickname is probably wallet, keys, and a little bit of lint. So while the fact that the US has enabled Saudi Arabia is nothing new, the extent to which Trump is prioritising money above all else is really dangerous. Is it any wonder that they have been emboldened here? After MBS's roundup of his rivals, Trump tweeted his support. After his blockade of Qatar, Trump, for some reason, took credit for it. And that kind of shit has consequences. Time and again, Trump has chosen extreme friendliness with MBS, a leader who, in the words of one Saudi critic, has created a climate of fear and intimidation, going on to say, "We Saudis deserve better." That critic was Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist who is widely thought to have been murdered in the Saudi consulate. And while Trump has said that Saudi Arabia faces severe punishment if it's proven that they were behind this, does anyone really believe that that is something that he's honestly committed to? A much more revealing response came in the Oval Office after the news of Khashoggi's disappearance broke. Just watch him render in real time the cost-benefit analysis that he was applying to the situation.
Again, this took place in Turkey, and to the best of our knowledge, Khashoggi is not a United States citizen. Is that right? Or is that right? He's a permanent resident, okay. We don't like it, John. We don't like it, and we don't like it even a little bit. But as to whether or not we should stop $110 billion from being spent in this country, knowing they have 4 or 5 alternatives, 2 very good alternatives, that would not be acceptable to me.
He is openly demonstrating to the entire world, and to Saudi Arabia specifically, that arms deal much more important than butchered journalist. Look, clearly, giving Saudi Arabia green lights for 2 solid years has had consequences, and a lot of people now have some big decisions to make. The second annual Davos in the desert begins 9 days from now, and already all of these companies have pulled out, although as of right now, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin is still planning to attend, which is ridiculous. The desert is comfortably hot enough without that smoke show. Am I right? Am I right? Smoke show, right? He can get it. That's a fuck me face. Am I right? Am I right on that? Now, as for the WWE, while they say they are monitoring the situation, their gigantic crown jewel event is still scheduled for November, meaning John Cena could well be back there doing this, which I guess in this context would mean you don't see these human rights abuses right here. As for the president, again, look, every US leader has chosen to make compromises when it comes to Saudi Arabia, but Trump may well be the first one who doesn't see it as a compromise. Because he and MBS are similar in some of the worst possible ways. They both love money, they're both a product of inherited wealth, they both love self-promotion yet disdain the press, and they even both share a design aesthetic that amounts to Elvis tries to remember what Versailles looks like, but can't. And Trump's intense bromance with MBS is bad news, because when you set no boundaries on an oppressive regime, they are always going to ask themselves, how much can we get away with here? And as we saw this week, the answer to that may well be pretty much anything.